So I have finally made it to Mission Impossible number 5, which is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This is the official start of the Christopher McQuarrie era of Mission Impossible films, as he would be the writer-director for all the upcoming Mission Impossible movies, starting with Rogue Nation. So that includes Fallout, Dead Reckoning, and The Final Reckoning. So this is now kind of his series along with Tom Cruise. Now, Chris McQuarrie's, resume speaks for itself. No, not everything he's put out has been great. The 2017 Mummy, not really a well-received film, but this is also the man who wrote The Usual Suspects, which is a masterpiece. The Way of the Gun, which is another just incredible film. Edge of Tomorrow, another Tom Cruise film. So now this franchise, like I said, is pretty much theirs. So it's gonna kind of give us a little bit of a different vibe. And I do have some things to say about Rogue Nation. This came out 10 years ago in 2015. McQuarrie is the writer-director. Tom Cruise returns from the previous films, along with Jeremy Renner, Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, Sean Harris, Rebecca Ferguson. Alec Baldwin is here. And this movie serves as a very good follow-up to Ghost Protocol, because the story stays in the kind of circled around the IMF. This movie kind of reminds me a lot of Furious 6, where you've got the IMF and then you've got sort of the, I guess you could say, the evil IMF known as the Syndicate. And so the Syndicate ends up being the villains of this movie. And many of them used to be MI6 agents, like, for example, Sean Harris's character, Solomon Lane, who acts as one of the main villains of this film. Simon McBurney is Atlee, another traitor to the cause. And again, I must say that I don't think either, these were great villains. I think they were a step up from Rogue Nation, but I don't think either of these villains have still really hit the highs of Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm not biased towards Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's just that his performance really gripped me. Now, when it comes to this movie, what kind of really stands out about this movie. This is now the 5th movie in the franchise. And when you have a franchise get to movies 4 and 5, this is where the cracks start to show, right? Like, you sometimes will see it with the 3rd film. We oftentimes have 3rd movies that are a step down from their predecessors. Some are just straight up bad. But it's the 4th and 5th movies that really show more cracks. But what they managed to do here with this movie is, because we're kind of already familiar with the characters, the movie does kind of just jump us into a big action scene from the start, and it kind of expects you to know at the very least what happened in the previous movie. At the very least, there's still some character development, but going in, you already know these characters. However, one of the things that this movie really surprised me, that it really surprised me about this movie, is that this film is almost entirely wall-to-wall action. But what's weird about movies that are wall-to-wall action is that we typically tend to sort of clown them as being popcorn movies, because the wall-to-wall action usually happens at the expense of the characters. But I felt like this movie, surprisingly enough, really gave a lot of room for all the characters. Specifically, I think my favorite character in this movie, the standout, was William Brandt, played by Jeremy Renner. Because he's not really deep in the action in this movie. He has a different role. But this really shows Jeremy Renner's acting chops. I think too many people know him from, a few of the Marvel movies as Hawkeye. I recently saw him the first time I watched 28 Weeks Later, and he was great in that. But, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he's surrounded by actors like Robert Downey Jr., who just eat everybody for lunch. So you really don't, because he's not really the centerpiece, you don't get to see his chops. And in this movie, He's almost like the number two main character behind Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt. So the movie has a tremendous amount of action. There's really nothing in the movie that's boring, but not at the expense of the characters and their bond and how they come together and work with each other to resolve these problems. Like some of the other films in the Mission Impossible movies, they obviously went all over the world. They went to Vienna, they went to Casablanca, which is in Morocco. They shot on location. And I do want to say something that I think people really have to take into account, and that is that Tom Cruise is absolutely nuts. Tom Cruise is absolutely crazy. Here we have a guy who's a multimillionaire, could retire anytime he wants to from acting. And not only is he still acting, despite the fact that, okay, look, Tom Cruise might not look it, right? But Tom Cruise is legitimately 62 years old, right? Tom Cruise is in his 60s, and he is doing a lot of his own stunts, a lot of his own set pieces. He volunteers to do them. And I didn't really pay much attention to this until I watched Top Gun Maverick a few years ago, because I thought it was interesting that during the production of that movie, Cruise insisted that he and the other actors actually go up in the F-18s to kind of give them an understanding of the pressure of what it's like to be up there and get them accustomed to being like pilots. So it's sort of like a method acting technique, because when you see Top Gun Maverick and you see a lot of these crazy maneuvers and you see the looks on the faces of the actors, a lot of it is not just them acting and performing for the camera. They're actually feeling, the pressure and the dizziness of being up there. And even if you're a seasoned pilot, it can do a number on your body. That's why they have physical examinations for pilots. It's not just them sitting in a chair in a cockpit. There's actual pressure there. And with these Mission Impossible movies, every movie, I think, raises the stakes. And I think kind of tries new stunts. And I've noticed in the promotional materials to Final Reckoning that they're probably hiding the biggest set piece of all at the very end of the movie. Probably you won't see that in any of the TV spots until after it comes out. But good Lord, who knows what they have planned for that one. But it just kind of feels like the Fast and Furious movies, where it raises the stakes. But the good thing about, Rogue Nation is that it doesn't go too far in the realm of being preposterous like the Fast and Furious movies did. I sort of compared the two series because you have the different team members, they go on these missions and they accomplish these goals. The difference, and comically so, is that in Mission Impossible, these are all well-trained people, whereas in Fast and Furious, they're just a bunch of fast drivers. So it's a bit more ridiculous, bit harder to swallow, but nevertheless, they still sort of have similar. You can compare the two series in that the stakes are always raised, but I think Fast and Furious really got ridiculous. Really around Furious late, I could say Furious 6 started to go in that direction. Fast 5 was really the breaking point, but I love that movie. Furious 7 is where I just said, okay, this is too much for me. When you see head-on collisions and people survive, I know that might not be a lot for some, and I know a lot of folks love that movie because of the tribute to Paul Walker, and I also agree with that. It was a beautiful tribute. By the way, I do have reviews for all those films here on the channel, so check that out. I got them in its own playlist. But when it comes to Mission Impossible, it's a bit easier to swallow. Yes, there's technology that doesn't really exist at the time of the film being made, or does it? Because you have to remember, folks, the military and government institutions have technology that we won't even see here in the public because of security compromises. So they're already ahead. Like, military tech is already ahead of what we see by decades. Like, even the most advanced aircraft that we have now on this planet was first being, like, blueprinted and thought up in the late 90s. And that feels like an eternity ago. This is the fact. So when you see these movies, I oftentimes will sit there and think, I wonder if we really have something like this. And sometimes you can find it, especially with more time going by. This is now a 10-year-old film. So Tom Cruise is nuts. I mean, there's an underwater sequence in this movie where if you have a fear of drowning, the thing with me is I couldn't truly get entirely into it because I knew he survived because there's other movies. And even if I were to see it for the first time, I probably wouldn't really think he was going to drown. But man, Christopher McQuarrie's directing style, you feel like the anxiety, you almost feel like you're being choked in that scene. And that to me is a combination of a great director, great cinematography, and a great actor. And Christopher McQuarrie works well with Tom Cruise. I mean, it's the truth. And this is a movie that I wish I had seen in IMAX. Now we're getting to the point where, and yes, all the Mission Impossible films should be seen in IMAX, obviously. That they're meant to be seen like that. Big action films should be seen in Dolby Vision or IMAX. Take your pick, whatever you got at your movie theater. Maybe you have both. But I am kicking myself in the ass for not seeing these when I could have. Tom Cruise, there's obviously been a lot of controversy about the kind of person he is behind the scenes, and there's been negative statements made about him. When it comes to his films, though, the guy is one of the last movie stars from almost a bygone era. You can say Harrison Ford also. He is older, but Tom Cruise goes all the way back decades, and he's like the last guy who's still drawing people into the movie theater. Like, this movie's very enjoyable, man. Like, even if, you aren't really big on action films, like, the characters I think are enough to, keep you into the not just the character, but the plots are enough to keep you invested into this film. Now, where does it rank in comparison to the other one? So this one was tough for me because I'll be honest, I think there are bigger stunts in Rogue Nation, and I like the story of Rogue Nation, but I think I liked Ghost Protocol a little bit more. I think I actually like the premise of Ghost Protocol and the execution a little bit more than Rogue Nation. Now, that's not saying that I didn't like this movie. And I want to say this right now. I was told that Rogue Nation gets better upon subsequent viewings. That when you give it a second viewing, knowing where things end up, knowing where the chips fall, it's actually better on rewatch. And I see that. I can totally see that. So, but for right now, I've only seen each film once. I think Rogue Nation, and maybe it's because of how much of a step up Ghost Protocol is. I think Rogue Nation, I would rank it slightly below Ghost Protocol. So I think Ghost Protocol as of now is probably at the top, followed by Rogue Nation, then Mission Impossible 3, and so on and so forth. Maybe what I'll do is, after I review all of them, including the last one, or supposedly the last one, The Final Reckoning, maybe I'll do like a tier list or something here on the channel. So yeah, man, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the series keeps getting bigger and ballsier, and I look forward to seeing, I think the next one is Fallout. That's the one that came out in 2018, and that's one that I also have not seen. And then, of course, we got to get to the Dead Reckoning, and find the Reckoning duology, so that's coming up. Anyways, leave your comments down below. Where would you rank the Mission Impossible movies? I'll see you guys real soon, okay? Take care of yourself.